Long before the Roman Empire dominated the world, a fierce and proud people controlled the vast, dark forests of Western Europe.
The Romans called them the Gauls. They were a massive collection of independent Celtic tribes spread across modern-day France and Belgium. Unlike Rome, they were never a single, united empire. They were dozens of rival clans, fiercely loyal only to their own chieftains. Despite Roman propaganda calling them savages, the Gauls were actually unparalleled master blacksmiths and brilliant inventors. In fact, it was the Gallic tribes who invented chainmail armor, a brilliant defense later copied by the Roman legions. They were also wealthy farmers, harvesting massive fields of golden wheat and inventing the first mechanical harvesting reapers.
Every noble warrior wore a torque, a heavy, beautifully crafted gold or bronze ring securely fastened around their neck. But the true power behind the chieftains were the Druids. These secretive priests were the judges, healers, and spiritual masters of Gaul. The Druids never wrote anything down. All their sacred, ancient knowledge was strictly memorized and passed down entirely through spoken word. Roman records claim the Druids practiced horrific human sacrifices to appease their nature gods, though the absolute truth remains heavily debated. They did not build stone temples. Instead, they worshipped in deep, hidden forest groves, believing trees held the spirits of the earth. To the Gauls, warfare was not just politics. It was a sacred path to absolute glory and honor. They bleached their hair with lime water until it stood up like white spikes, making them look like towering, wild demons.
Before charging, they blew into the carnix, a massive bronze war horn shaped like a boar's head, designed to terrify their enemies. This fierce, untamed culture was rapidly expanding southward, putting them on a direct, violent collision course with a growing republic, Rome. While Rome was still a fragile young republic, the fierce Celtic tribes of the north were rapidly expanding their massive territory southward. The powerful Senones tribe, led by their terrifying warlord Brennus, besieged the Etruscan city of Clusium, bringing Rome into the conflict. In 390 BC, a terrifying Gallic army of 30,000 warriors marched on Rome. The two cultures finally met at the river Alia.
Panic consumed the Roman legions as the massive Gallic force charged across the battlefield.
The undisciplined Roman defense evaporated instantly. Thousands of panicked legionaries threw down their valuable weapons and fled in absolute terror. Days later, Brennus and his victorious, unstoppable army arrived at the gates of Rome, only to find them completely wide open and unguarded. Most of the Roman population had fled, leaving only a small, desperate garrison to defend the impenetrable fortress on the Capitoline Hill.
The elderly Roman senators bravely chose to stay, sitting on their ivory chairs in the silent city, calmly waiting for the barbaric invaders.
A curious Gallic warrior touched a senator's beard. The elder struck him with his ivory staff, breaking the eerie, silent spell.
The spell was broken. Brennus unleashed his army. The first historic sack of the eternal city of Rome had officially begun. For months, the Gauls plundered the city, burning thousands of homes and looting priceless temples for gold and treasure. High on the Capitoline Hill, the besieged Romans slowly starved, forced to watch as their homes below turned to ash. Defeated by famine, the Romans surrendered and agreed to pay a humiliating ransom: 1,000 pounds of gold. When the Romans protested that the weights were unfair, Brennus famously threw his heavy Celtic broadsword onto the scale, shouting, "Vae victis, woe slava." For 3 centuries, the humiliation of Brennus burned in Roman memory. Rome had now transformed into an unstoppable, organized military machine. In 58 BC, A brilliantly ambitious Roman general named Julius Caesar saw Gaul as his ultimate stepping stone to absolute political power. Caesar ruthlessly exploited the bitter, ancient rivalries between the Gallic tribes, using a brilliant strategy of divide and conquer. After years of brutal Roman slaughter, looting, and mass enslavement, the proud Celtic tribes realized they were facing total annihilation. In 52 BC, a charismatic young nobleman named Vercingetorix emerged from the Arverni tribe, demanding the absolute impossible, total unity. Deep in the sacred forests, chieftains from dozens of bitter rival tribes finally swore a sacred blood oath to fight as one single nation. Vercingetorix knew he couldn't beat the Roman war machine in open battle. He ordered a ruthless, devastating scorched earth campaign. The Gauls burned their own farms, villages, and grain supplies, desperately trying to starve Caesar's advancing, hungry legions. The strategy worked perfectly. At the high mountain fortress of Gergovia, Vercingetorix achieved the unthinkable. He dealt Caesar a crushing defeat. Enraged and deeply humiliated, Caesar refused to retreat to Rome. He rallied his starving legions for one final apocalyptic showdown. Vercingetorix retreated with 80,000 warriors to the massive hilltop stronghold of Alesia, waiting for a massive Gallic relief army. But Caesar did not attack the walls. Instead, he ordered his men to build an impossible wall entirely around the mountain. In just weeks, the Romans constructed 11 miles of deadly fortifications, effectively trapping the entire Gallic army inside their own fortress. As starvation quickly set in, Vercingetorix sent desperate cavalry messengers smashing through the Roman lines to summon the rest of Gaul. Over 200,000 furious Gallic warriors answered the call, marching massively toward Alesia to crush the Romans from the outside. On the horizon, the earth began to shake. 250,000 Gallic warriors finally arrived to break the Roman siege. Caesar was now trapped between two armies. He ordered his men to build a second wall, facing outward, to defend against the new threat. The battle erupted with a massive cavalry charge. Gallic horsemen smashed into the Roman lines in a desperate attempt to create a gap. Under the cover of pitch-black darkness, the Gauls launched a coordinated night assault, raining thousands of flaming arrows onto the Roman camp. But Caesar had hidden deadly traps in the dark, deep pits filled with sharpened wooden stakes and iron spikes. The Gauls discovered a weak point in the Roman wall at the foot of a northern hill. This was where the entire war would be decided. From inside the city, Vercingetorix led his starving warriors in one final suicidal charge to meet their brothers on the outside. Steel met steel in a brutal, muddy trench. The Romans and Gauls were so closely packed they could barely swing their weapons. Recognizing the danger, Caesar himself donned his iconic scarlet cloak and charged into the thickest part of the bloodiest fray. At the critical moment, Caesar unleashed his secret weapon, elite German cavalry hidden behind a hill, flanking the exhausted Gauls. The relief army broke. Panic turned into a slaughter. The hope of a united Gaul vanished in the blood-stained mud of Alesia. As the sun rose over a silent battlefield, the surviving Gauls inside Alesia realized the absolute end had finally come. To save his people from total massacre, Vercingetorix chose to surrender himself as the ultimate prize for Julius Caesar. In a final act of legendary pride, he rode in circles around Caesar's throne before throwing his weapons at the Romans' feet. The war was over. Vercingetorix was taken in chains to Rome, and the once free tribes of Gaul were now Roman subjects. After the war, Rome's iron grip began to transform the wild landscape of Gaul with thousands of miles of straight stone roads.
Ancient tribal hill forts were abandoned as magnificent new cities rose, featuring marble temples, massive theatres, and public baths. The harsh, ancient Celtic tongues of the forest were slowly silenced, replaced by the organized legal power of Latin. Gallic chieftains traded their spiked hair and iron swords for Roman tunics and seats in the provincial government.
But Rome feared the Druids. Their secret influence was seen as a threat to imperial law, and they were officially banned. The sacred oak groves, once the heart of Celtic spirituality, were systematically cut down by Roman legionaries. Driven into the deepest shadows, the last Druids continued their ancient rituals in total secrecy, far from Roman eyes. Legend says they still gathered mistletoe at night, using golden sickles under the pale light of a full moon. The gods did not die, they merged. The Celtic god Cernunnos was quietly reinvented as a Roman deity in secret shrines. Traditional Gallic beer was replaced by the sophisticated wine of the south, as vineyards began to dominate the countryside. For 200 years, Gaul experienced a period of unprecedented stability and massive economic growth under the Pax Romana. Without the Druids to memorize their stories, much of the true, unrecorded history of the Gauls began to fade into myth. As Rome itself began to change, a new religion from the East started to replace both Roman and Celtic gods.
The people were no longer just Gauls or Romans, they had become Gallo-Romans, the true ancestors of modern France.
The ancient Celtic world was gone, buried beneath the stone and law of Rome, waiting for a new era to begin. By the 4th century, the once invincible borders of Roman Gaul began to crack under the weight of internal rot and external pressure.
Fierce Germanic tribes like the Franks and Alemanni crossed the frozen Rhine, sensing the absolute weakness of the dying Roman eagle.
The peaceful villas and organized cities of Roman Gaul were once again swallowed by the terrifying chaos of total war.
Among the invaders, the Franks emerged as the new masters, eventually giving their very name to the modern nation of France. Their leader, Clovis, united the Frankish tribes and adopted Christianity, effectively bridging the Roman and Germanic worlds. A new language began to form, a complex, beautiful blend of vulgar Latin, Germanic grit, and ancient Celtic whispers. Though their rulers changed, the common people remained Gallic at heart, their ancient Celtic DNA surviving every single invasion. In the misty northwest, in a region called Brittany, the ancient Celtic language and traditions refused to die, surviving for centuries. Today, archaeologists continue to pull the lost secrets of the Gauls from the deep, dark earth of the French countryside. Modern pop culture has reimagined them as invincible rebels, forever fighting against the impossible power of the Roman Empire. Scientific studies prove that the majority of modern French citizens are still direct biological descendants of the ancient Gallic tribes. The Gallic rooster became the enduring symbol of the nation, a proud, fierce bird that refuses to be silenced by any predator.
In the 19th century, Vercingetorix was rediscovered as a national hero, a symbol of resistance for a modern, united France. The Gauls were never truly destroyed. Their spirit of fierce independence and rebellion remains the defining trait of their descendants. From the master blacksmiths of the forest to the founders of a nation, the legend of the Gauls lives on forever.